Hey guys, welcome to another episode of How Creatives Think. I'm Landon Hook.
I'm Chris Henderson.
And we are really excited to have a photographer named David Teran, who is based in San Antonio, with us today. He has work that has spanned many, many years. He does a lot of portrait work, but we were really honored to be able to dive into his most recent project, Hasselblad Ballet, today, and kind of see what that project has the journey it's taken and what that project really means to him.
And if you've ever wondered how watching the movie Rattatouille can lead to high artistic photography, keep listening. Hi, everybody. We're here with David Teran, and we are going to have an amazing conversation about his photography and his creative process and kind of how he ticks, how he thinks. And I guess the best way to start off, David, is just tell us about you, tell us about your story. How did you start doing what you do? And just help us understand who you are and your journey.
Well, first off, thanks for having me, Chris and Landon. I appreciate it. I don't get asked often to be on podcasts, so this is kind of cool. I'm a photographer by trade. It's my day job. And I guess I'll just start from how I became a photographer, because it's funny. Like, I never grew up. You hear a lot of people saying, like, I took my dad's camera from when I was a kid, blah, blah. No, I never wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a chef. And I was like, I saw the movie Rattatouille, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a chef. And a friend of mine said, hey, David, why don't you buy a camera to take pictures of your food? So, and this was like 2007, 2008. So before the days of Instagram, before the days of, Snapchat, where you're posting whatever you eat. I don't use Snapchat. I'm just I know that maybe that's what you do.
So the kids do, right?
The kids, yeah. I don't know what your demographic is, but yes. Before those days, before Instagram, it was like kind of Flickr was a big deal. So I would post my pictures on Flickr, and then MySpace. MySpace was a big deal, and so I bought a camera to take pictures of my food, and I'd tell friends, hey, buy me the ingredients. I'll go to your house. I'll prepare the food. I'll clean up. I'll do like a personal chef experience, and let me get cooking experience. And long story short, I ended up meeting to this day, who's my biggest client. And he said, David, stop messing around with food. Your pictures are going to be seen around the world. Your talent is photography. And I'm like, with all due respect, you're crazy. I'm like, I'm 18 years old. I'm like, what do you mean? I have no desire to be a photographer. And he saw something in me before there was anything to be seen. And longer story short, he, within like 2 years of that conversation, he hired me to photograph his pretty big album cover of his 25-year commemorative album. And those pictures were seen in like 17 billboards in 17 countries and all over Latin America. Wow. And that kind of was like how I became a photographer. And I say that I wouldn't be a photographer if it wasn't for him. If I didn't have him as a client in my arsenal, I wouldn't be a photographer.
Wow.
Dang.
That's pretty cool.
Wow.
So I never wanted to be a photographer. I never was like, I dreamed, but it just kind of like I was pushed towards it.
So let's pull on one thread real quick. What is it about, Ratatouille, all-time classic movie, but what is it about the movie that led you into thinking, you know what, food, that's my thing, I'm going to do it?
The way it was romanticized, like how the idea of just making food was just so, they did an incredible job of romanticizing this idea of like, it's going to be such a wonderful life. I love eating food. I have an Instagram dedicated to food that I eat. David eats good food. And it's just like, that really is like just my snapshot of like, what is it I'm eating? What is it? Whatever. That's just my snapshot. And like, that's like, now it's funny. I don't love cooking now. I'll avoid it if I can, but eating food is, I think it was the eating the food part. And then like the part of Paris where it was just like so romantic, and the music, and it was just like, it just tugged on my heartstrings. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do.
So were you in the U.S. when you were following cooking, or were you out of the country?
Yeah.
Okay,
here in the States, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Was it so in the movie, you say the romantic side of it had more to do with, it seemed, the experience, because it was kind of centered around the concept of, it's something that everyone comes around together, especially that European experience, that it's a thing. Eating is the thing. It's because we all come together as a family, or we all come together as friends. And so is it that you had kind of this notion of the experience of what the consuming of the food, like the food was almost incidental to a certain degree to the experience that it provides? Was it that kind of drew you, or was it no, it's just the taste?
You know what? And honestly, I'm being very sincere right now. It's just hitting me. I don't know if you remember at the end of the movie. There's the scene with the critic, and he eats the ratatouille. Spoiler alert: he eats the ratatouille, and he goes instantly back to his mom in the kitchen.
That's the scene I was thinking of.
And I saw this video the other day suggesting that was the kitchen that the rat. I think was the rat Ratatouille? I don't even know. I've honestly only seen the movie twice in my life. When I was 18, and then like I saw it last year. But the rat, I think this video was suggesting that this rat lived in the critic's mom's house, and that's why he had the recipe down exactly.
Interesting. Okay,
But
I never pieced that together.
What I'm getting is that like my mom passed away at the beginning, so in 2018. I'm sorry, in 2008. And I now, in retrospect, I have all these recipes that she wrote down for me, and like those, there's just like this really wonderful, like instantly, as soon as I taste those flavors, my mind goes back to that time and to that era, and it's just incredible. Like even though I don't make them as well as she made them, the food just like brings. I mean, it's like you said, everybody has to do it. There's a quote I love that says, one of the best things about life is that whatever you're doing, we have to regularly stop and eat, dedicate time to eating. Therefore, make the food good. That was the guy from Chick-fil-A, the owner, and he's like, whatever we're doing, like whatever we have to stop and dedicate time to eat. So therefore, make the food good. And so, I just love good food.
Well, there's an interesting. Go ahead, Chris.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, well, there's an interesting thought that it was. The overarching theme was of memory, experiencing something that transports you back to experiences that had an impact on your life. And I'm wondering if the transition from that to photography, because photography, while it is different from being a chef and cooking and crafting food in that way, there is definitely an aspect of recording and memory and being able to look back on a moment in time. Did you feel there was a correlation there that you connected with between those two mediums?
No, but now I'm thinking about it. It's funny, and it's funny because I don't consider myself an artist. Like there's people like, "Oh, Dave, you're so artistic," and I'm just like, I think I if you tell me I'm technically adept, I'll be like, okay, I can accept that. I think I know what I'm doing on the technical side. And so I think I know what I'm doing there. But when it comes to like the why, let me do this because this is so artistic. No, not necessarily. I don't do it for that reason. I don't do it for this loft. I just do it for, let me make a good reason, a technically good photograph, and that's it. Obviously, I can see like a photo that I'm like, oh, there's depth to this photo. This is just a boring photo, a snapshot. No, there's something a little different. There's something more to this photograph that brings us and draws our attention and makes us desire that photograph. So my mom passed away right when my photography career was kind of just starting. It's funny. She I joke with my dad. She let me, I was 17 at the time. She let me $3,500 to buy my first camera. And sadly, she passed away a few months later. And my dad never knew that she lent me that money. And so my dad's like, "Oh, hey, I want my $3,500." I never got to pay my mom back, but she kind of planted those seeds. That for me, that's really that's a nice thought that she sowed the seeds to start my photography. But every year I try to photograph my father now because it's just like the idea of like remembering or capturing a moment, because photographs are so important. And the thing is, people don't realize how important photographs are until it's too late. Until you're like, I wish I had a photograph. I wish I'd taken that photograph. And so you look at my phone, it's just selfies of like me with friends. It's just like always, capturing. So like, there might be that connection of that remembrance, all right, Landon, the way you say I can definitely see a correlation there.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it seems like your creativity, at least as we've kind of discussed so far and looking through your portfolio, really does seem to be about the heart of capturing a memory. In other words, when I look at this photo, I feel like I know what the temperature is. I feel like I understand what it felt like to be there and what was inspiring about it, which is one of the most creative artistic things in the world to do. And the fact that you don't consider yourself an artist is hilarious to me, because I'm looking at these going, well, then I don't know what art is, I guess.
See, the thing is, art's relative, and I'm not pushing back. I'm just saying art's relative. You see, like, and I think here's the bottom line of why I don't like to consider myself an artist, because you see these paintings like in New York City that sell for $5 million, and it's just a blob of paint. Or you see like or that one painting that sold for millions of dollars, and it was just blue, solid blue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, if that's what an artist is, I don't want to have anything. It's too snobby for me. I'm not, I don't want to have anything to do with that. So I think that's really why I shun away from the idea of being called an artist. Because it's like, for me, it's very, as I'm wearing this hat, because the hat makes me look cooler. The idea of being an artist, it just sounds pretentious to me. I wear this hat, because I think it makes me look really cool, which is super pretentious.
Yeah.
Like, the idea of being called an artist is just like pretentious and a turnoff, and I'm just like, I don't want to have that's my perception of that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. So basically, your thesis then would be, a truly creative, artistic person is the opposite of pretentious. You just down to earth and just doing what you do, and it just so happens to flow out of you.
Maybe, yeah. Again, I wouldn't call myself creative though, so I don't know if that would be my thesis, but someone's thesis on me could be that.
Well, it's this interesting concept because as you say, I don't consider myself creative. You put an immense amount of importance on remembrance, and an immense amount of importance on not letting moments that shouldn't just pass by. Don't let those moments pass by. Let's sit in that moment. Let's experience it. Let's remember this moment in a way that 10 years from now we won't regret not having a photograph or some type of memento from this moment. So, did you feel like, specifically with your recent project Hasselblad Ballet, that sense of remembrance and community? Did you sense that as you were documenting those ballerinas in your project, or is it simply just I think this is a cool project to undertake?
Yeah. So the ballet, it's funny. People always think that I love the ballet. I have this running joke. I've fallen asleep at the ballet in 3 different continents. I don't like the ballet. I'll never turn down tickets to see the ballet, but I don't love the ballet. It was a different level of culture than I grew up in, and so it's kind of just like, it's cool. It's great to see, and I love photographing it from the wings. But like attending it, I'm not a big fan. So when one day I was in Argentina. Again, long story short, I connected with the ballerina in Argentina, and I just happened to have a film camera. And whenever I care to take a photograph, I take it on film, because since my day job is photography, I'm just constantly taking digital photographs, and there's just like the only time I kind of feel like an artist, a creative, is when I'm in the darkroom, where I'm just like, okay, it does take effort to make a solid print with your blacks and your whites, contrast and sharpen. I mean, in the darkroom, anybody can just, I call it pixel pushing. Anybody can just take a photograph. They look at the back of the screen. They're like, no, this needs to look different. It's too dark. It's too bright. And like, okay, well, let me raise the bar in Lightroom or Photoshop. Let me brighten it. But to be able to do it on film, and I realize there is a certain, in the photography industry, an idea of pretentiousness. I'm going to shoot film. Film's better. I'm totally on board with that. I'm like, yes, film is so much better than digital, but that's different. That's a different sidebar. But I had my film camera, which was my hobby camera at the time. I asked the ballerina if I could photograph her, and she said yes. And it just started as like, let me take some pictures. I travel a lot for work, so let me photograph a ballerina in every city. And it kind of turned into a long-term project. But like, I don't think the project really came into its own until about 2020, when like I came across a couple of photographers that I really love, and I'm just like, wow, I can see photography so differently. I say you see life a little bit differently after I learned about these photographers.
That's really, really cool. So how did the project come about? Was this like I'm not sure I know the story.
Okay, well, I'll tell the story. I'll tell it short story long. I had the hobby camera. I was in Argentina photographing for a client of mine. October. So backtrack to October 2017. A client of mine said, "Hey, David, will you photograph my album cover in Argentina?" And I was like, "Sure." So we ironed out the dates, the details for March 2018. And fast forward like a week after October, after that meeting with the client, I to this day I don't know how this came across my desk, but I saw a Teen Vogue article of a ballerina from New York City traveling to Argentina, to Buenos Aires, which is where I had just booked a gig. And so like I clicked on the link because of the Buenos Aires aspect of it, not because of the ballet. And so like I'm perusing, reading the article, and I'm like, I've been there, I've eaten there, I've stayed at that same hotel. It's like a blog post. And so at the end of the post, she says this New York City ballerina who was at the time, she's writing about her experience in Argentina. She said, "This is my Argentinian friend, Marisol." And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll reach out to Marisol and do a photo shoot. That'd be kind of fun. I've never photographed a ballerina. When I got to Argentina, the only day that I was available, I was there for 2 weeks, was the only day that she was available. So it was just like providential that we were able to connect the exact same day. And I fell in love in a very non-romantic way with the whole experience. Like she was so kind. Her mother, they brought me Argentinian chocolates to the photo shoot. They took me out to eat afterwards. It was like 70 degrees. It was sunny. The streets were empty. They call Buenos Aires the Paris of Latin America, South America. So there was just all these things that combined. It's just kind of, I fell in love with the whole experience. And I always say that had I photographed another ballerina, I don't think this project would have existed. But because of how everything just came together for it to be perfect. And then at the end, she's like, "Hey, you should, I see that you travel a lot. You should photograph a ballerina in every city." And it just kind of started. Like I didn't know it was going to be a long-term project. I just started as a hobby. Like I said, photographing ballerinas was my Hasselblad, 12 frames, one roll of film. And that was it. It just kind of happened. It kind of fell into my lap. I didn't seek it out. I guess is how I could say.
I wanted to talk about one particular image from this series because it's my favorite image from this series, and it's the first one that you have on your website. It's of the ballerina on the road. It's kind of foggy and hazy, and there's this what looks like this really old tree kind of arching out over the road. And I remember when I've been following the Hasselblad Ballet project for a while, but when I knew we would get the opportunity to interview, I looked at all the photos on your website recently, and that image just stuck out to me as it felt different. Like I loved all the images, but that one just felt different. And like, did you feel the same way? What was the process of creating that image? Is there a story behind that image? Tell me about that shot.
So, it was a gorgeous shot.
Thank you. It's funny. My favorite part. What I joke about is that my favorite part about this project is the food. I get to travel the world and eat different foods, right? That's the best part about it. But I mean, all joking aside, my favorite part about it is relationships, the getting to know people. I mean, life is about relationship. And so getting to know ballerina, there's a story behind every single photograph. I mean, some stories are bigger and grander than other stories, but every single story, there's a reason, there's a how that got to. And I love this story because this was, I think, 2021. My brother lives right outside of San Francisco, and this photograph was made in Point Reyes. I believe it's called Point Reyes, which is a little north of San Francisco, about 2 hours north. And I had seen online this tree, and I was like, I have to photograph at this tree. This would be super cool. So I text my brother. He's like, "Oh yeah, I know where that is. Come visit. You can borrow my car and drive up there." So I go visit. I reach out to a ballerina, and I give her the coordinates of a location about 10 minutes away. I didn't know exactly the GPS coordinates of the tree, but I knew that the general area. And so I gave her the coordinates for, I'm sorry, it's a house where like a radio tower where they built for during World War II. And so it's this at the end of this row of trees, beautiful trees. There's like trees on either end of this area, this long roadway. I was like, let's meet here. This is a point that I can give you an address, and we'll meet here, and then we'll go find the tree. So we meet there, we do a shoot, and we forget about the tree. And by the time it's ready to leave, I'm ready to leave because it's a 2-hour trek back to San Francisco. I'm like, hey, let's see if we can look for this tree real quick, and let's take a couple of pictures. And we drive and we drive. We drove like 15 minutes, and we could just never find the tree. And it was just frustrating. I was like, I gotta go. I'm sorry. We got some good pictures. We'll call it a day. And so I drive back 2 hours to my brother's house, and I tell him about it. He's like, oh, I know exactly where the tree is. And so we hopped back into the truck and turned around and drove. And what's funny is that like literally like 100 feet, had I gone around one more bend, there's the tree. And I just gave up like 100 feet. And it's like, what? So I saw it. I took pictures with my iPhone. I got GPS coordinates of exactly where the tree is. It was this beautiful sunny day. And I'm like, man, I'm so excited for this photograph. And so I was like, I'm gonna have to book another trip. So I booked another trip a month later, reached out to another ballerina. I was like, I know where this tree is. Can we shoot here? And she's like, sure. So I pick her up like at 3 a.m. so we could do like a sunrise photo shoot at this tree. And we drive, I think at 4 o'clock. Picked her up at 4 o'clock, and we started driving towards the tree. And as we're getting farther out of the city, it was just fog. Just I couldn't see in front of me because the fog was so thick. And we get to the parking lot, and I'm just so frustrated. I'm so annoyed because I was laser focused on. I told her, pack your sunglasses, pack your favorite sunglasses. This is my vision. And it was so windy in July. It was probably like 50 degrees. It was so cold and so windy. And I was not happy. I was really ticked off because I was like, my vision was, I want this image of the sun. And she's like, look, we drove 2 hours. Let's just take one picture. And if you don't like it, well, we'll just, whatever. If you're not feeling it, we'll call it a day. We'll go back to the other place, to where the row of trees, because that was really beautiful. And I was like, all right, fine. So I set her up, and I tell her name's Sasha. I'm like, Sasha, I want you to imagine like the wind is blowing you over. You're just fighting to stand up, but do it in a way where you're delicate and you're a ballerina. You're strong, but you're still very delicate. So show these two aspects, these two facets of being a ballerina. And I take one picture, and I was like, okay, I'm not feeling this. And I think I ended up taking like 2 pictures. And on film, you don't see it until obviously you develop it. It's in the chemistry later on. So I found out later, I was like, okay, it wasn't a horrible picture. But like I had no desire to take the picture.
I would say it was much more than just,
me.
it's not a horrible picture. It's a stunning image.
Yeah.
She kind of pushed me. Thank you. She pushed me to make a picture. We had a photographer friend there, and he's like, David, you're here. Just make the effort. He's like, it happens all the time. He's like, people will think it's cool because it's San Francisco. It's the fog. And I was like, I don't know how to meet her in fog. And he's like, no, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And it came out all right. People love the photo. It's not my favorite photograph because the project started very like ballerina and then camera. Like, let me photograph a ballerina. And towards the end of the project, and how I like the project to be seen is more the opposite. Like, I'm a photographer. Let me take a picture that just happens to have a ballerina in it. Like, I have no desire to take a typical ballet photograph, or typically ballet photography is let's make the ballet shine. Like, photography comes secondary, and the ballerina is like, I'm gonna make her lines look great and whatever, and her doing this beautiful, jump split, whatever. And I approach from the opposite. I'm like, I don't care about the ballet. Let me make a cool photograph that just happens to have a ballerina in it. And I think that's what kind of makes my ballet photography a little different. I don't like to call it ballet photography. That's why it's Hasselblad Ballet. The Hasselblad comes first, the photography, and the ballet comes secondary.
So another image that you have in this is the one with the waterfall, where the water is like you've clearly manipulated the stop so
No.
that you actually get the perfect. Like, is that a
You,
little bit
you
more
drug
of
your
kind of what you're
exposure
talking
pretty
about?
long for that one, I
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah. I'm gonna guess it was 1 second exposure, 1 second or maybe
Wow.
2, but it was probably a 1 second exposure.
Yeah, I know it's a really amazing shot for sure. Would you say that one is a little bit more kind of like what you're trying to accomplish, where it's the technical skill and she happens to be in it?
No, so like I think it's probably like one of the first or second images. There's a ballerina where you see her backside, and she has a tutu around her head, and that to me is like
Oh, I see. Yeah.
I want that image. I want Hasselblad Ballet to be described by that image. For me, it's
Mm.
quirky. It's weird. There's hard lines. There's shadow. There's highlights. The ballerina looks great. So the ballet aspect is very strong, which I have no problem with that. But that's just not my emphasis. But just the quirkiness, the humor in it, where like why is her sunglasses behind her? I look at that contact sheet and like that image I remember we just kind of stumbled upon it. I was like, hey, I see this line, let's make a frame here. And because I'm shooting a square, it's perfect. And so I was able to frame it real nice. But I told her, I want your leg to kind of follow the line of the shadow.
Mm.
So we worked that out. And then and then I was like, how can we make the tutu? Let's do something funky. She puts a tutu on. I'm like, okay, we got sunglasses. Let's add the sunglasses. But I remember looking at the 12 frames in total, and like the 5. This is frame number 6, and frames 1 through 5 look nothing like this image, and then frames 7 through 12 look nothing like. It was just like a one off during this photo shoot, and I love that image. I mean, for me, my favorite adjective for the project would be quirky. The quirky, different for me. Sometimes quirky is like you don't use quirky, in a nice way, but I love the word quirky when describing this project.
It's almost like the image that you're looking for asks more or causes people to ask more questions than it answers.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, the experience is one of, and you're noticing, like, even on this particular image, as I'm looking at it right now, I'm looking at lines. They're very strong lines, but even the shadow line doesn't match the other lines, but she matches the shadow line, doesn't match the other. Like, it's so many questions all wrapped into one in this artistic expression. It's really fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my favorite image probably that I've made. That's probably my favorite image I've ever made in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So what is it about, as you described, quirky? I understand what you mean. What is it about this tension, quirkiness, this asking questions, forcing the viewer to really just kind of analyze a bit more? What is it that draws you to wanting to express yourself in that way?
I think I see I'm gonna upset a lot of people. I see a lot of ballet photographers, and I just hate it. It's just so like boring. And so like I had no desire, like even though like the project kind of started the way, I was like, okay, if this project is going to become anything, I gotta do something different. And it just every ballet photography is that. It's just very, classical, very let's just make the ballerina look. And so I have no ballet experience. I joked at the beginning that I fall asleep at the ballet. So like I'm not coming from a point of view of a ballerina. I'm strictly coming from a photographer point of view. And so I love the idea. Like I'm constantly telling dad jokes. Like when does a dad joke become a dad joke?
I don't know.
When it becomes a parent.
Oh my gosh.
So like that's my nature. And like kind of how I introduce myself. Like I'm David with 2 D's. That's just my nature. I'm like ribbing people. I try to be a little bit humorous. And so that's just my nature. So this idea of just being a little different, like the David with 2 D's. Every time I get my coffee, like I remember I went to a coffee shop and like 6 months later, I went back and the ladies remembered me. She's like, "You're David with 2 D's." I'm like, "Yeah, how do you remember? I don't even know who you are." She's like, that stuck with me. And so the idea of like just something a little quirky, out of the ordinary, that I love that. Doing something that's just not expected. I think that's kind of what makes photography fun.
Yeah, break everybody out of the monotony of life.
Yeah, like I just released a book a few months ago on this project, and hopefully, like when people flip through the pages, the idea is that like there's surprised. Like they're not expecting that. Oh, I've never seen ballet in that light.
Well, it's this interesting idea of the more I hear you talk about yourself as well as your work, it seems like the two are so connected in that you yourself, apart from photography, love the quirky, love the dad jokes, love to be different, love to be remembered for something you said that made an impact or made someone laugh. And not that you're trying to make people laugh with your photography by any means, but it's the same idea of I want this image to be different, to not be what was expected, to be a little quirky, to really just find a place in someone's memory and find a home there. And it kind of comes full circle in this quest for remembrance, in this quest for memory, which I feel like even though the Hasselblad Ballet isn't the same as like I'm going to take a picture of my father on his birthday because I want to remember this moment, there's still a lot of that. These moments require attention and require us to take notice and remember them. Do you feel there's a correlation between even just taking pictures of your father and the Hasselblad Ballet project itself?
You know, it's funny. I'm constantly thinking about like, what are people going to say about me when I'm dead, when I'm gone? Like, what are your friends going to say? Like, how are they going to remember you? And so I think there might be some connection between like I want to be remembered and what legacy am I going to leave behind. And in one aspect, the photography is a part of who I am. But like on a bigger aspect, how are people going to remember me? Like what impact did I make on their lives? So yeah, I think this after this therapy session, I'm going to go and like figure out like, okay, remembrance. How can I recreate my entire biography? How can I recreate who I was a photographer around remembrance and memory?
Yeah. Well, and I'll also say this, just going back a little bit, you call yourself, or you say that you're not a creative person. I don't know many non-creative people who would rebook a trip to California to take a picture that they had in their mind and could see a picture of. That is, like, non-creative people or uncreative people do not do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, it helps that my brother lives there. But yes, San Francisco has a great ballet. I don't think if they didn't have a great ballet company, I don't think I would have done it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
But that tree, and I do love the image. I printed it really big, like 60 by 16. It's cool. It looks great, that big.
That image caught me, I think, because I noticed that you can clearly see the wind blowing her clothing, and the tree looks like it's being hit by a hurricane force wind, but she's just standing there facing it. Like, to me, it's like you captured subconsciously something extremely profound. And that's what drew me to it.
I don't know about profound, but I think it's a cool image, and I appreciate that. Like I said, I struggle with that. My photography is bigger than what it is. I mean, like, like the whole idea, and sorry to interrupt you, the idea of just like, I just want to make a great photograph, period. Like, I don't think I aspire necessarily to like, let me make this grand photograph that's bigger than what it really is. It's more of just like, let me just make a great photograph, technically solid photograph, and
but I think that frees you. I think you viewing yourself like that as well as your work like that frees you to be even more creative, because you're not even thinking about how can I be so creative? How can I make my audience find a deeper meaning in my photograph? It's not that. It's I want to take a great photograph and make a great image. But I really think that frees you to be even more creative, because you're just not worried about all of the stuff that you shouldn't be worried about when you're in a moment, you know?
One of my favorite bands of all time has a song that was one of their biggest hits, and it's hilarious because lyrically it's extraordinarily profound. Like, people have just, it's a masterclass in how to write lyrics. The funny thing is when you hear the story of how they wrote it, the guy wrote random things down because they were trying to get a demo out. And he later he was like, I'll just write the real lyrics later. And so it was just whatever top of the mind came out. And they could never actually redo the lyrics because he couldn't improve upon them. And he's like, I don't even know what I was talking about, to be perfectly honest with you. It was just stream of thought. But yet, what song
was that?
So it's a band called Toad the Wet Sprocket, and it's Walk on the Ocean.
Okay.
And
I have to look it up.
And lyrically, it's just, I mean, there are some dichotomies and stuff in it, but the story that it tells echoes essentially what we all do in the American life, go on vacation and then go right back to the real world where it's just boring and the air makes you choke. Like it's so profound, but it was from stream of thought. And again, that maybe that's what I'm trying to get at after Landon said what he said, because it kind of clicks for me. I think what I'm seeing in this massive catalog that you have here is true artistry, how I would define it, which is you're just going and just doing and seeing and it just spills out of you. And the story that it tells is really amazing. And sometimes it is highly crafted and sometimes it's not. Whereas people who run out of creativity are typically the ones that are like, man, I'm just in a writer's block. I got to come up with something, but I don't know what to do and and they never do anything. Whereas you just do and stuff comes out because it's inside of you. I don't know. That's just my take on it, and I just appreciate the work that you're doing, to be honest with you.
Well, thank you. For me, like I acknowledge that, like, people always try to hire me to photograph them for Hasselblad Ballet, and I was like, no, this is not a commission project. You can't pay me, because I noticed that when there's money involved, it's just I struggle to make an image that I love. Like the images I love the most are images that nobody paid me to make. Images that are just, they came out of, my excitement for making an image, and that was it.
Really, really appreciate it. We're gonna wrap it up, and I wanted to say again, thanks so much for chatting with us. This has been really, really cool. I've really loved exploring kind of your headspace. Honestly, I think the story from the Rattatouille wanting to be a cook into photography is it's one of the greatest stories of any movement into a field it's just a great story, and I love what you're doing. So I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Landon. Appreciate you reaching out. I really appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks so much.